after rook f5, rook g5. Nice support along the 5th rank. h5 is now possible. King g8, h5. The final attacking player in this positional delight. In this video we will be looking at the semi-final match between Radjabov and MVL. The first game was drawn. In this video we will look at the second game. Radjabov has the white pieces. Let's begin. Knight f3, knight f6, c4, c5, knight c3, d5. MVL has played this anti-Grunfeld line many times. Out of 20 games, he has won 5, lost 3 and drawn 12. So he is +2 in this variation. C d5, knight d5, e3. Now we enter a sub-variation. After e3, 12 games, he's won 1, lost 2 and 9 draws. Knight takes c3, d takes c3. The queen exchange line. 7 games, a win, a loss and 5 draws. The famous game being his victory over Magnus Carlsen in 2017 in the Sinquefield Cup. Queen c7, keeping the queens on, rather than playing queen takes d1. If we have a look at this variation, after king takes d1, this endgame looks innocent but is unpleasant for black. White will play e4 and then a4. The bishop can come to b5 or to c4, the king can tuck itself away on c2. Let's see a sample variation after bishop f5 which stops e4, knight d2 prepares it, and then the knight can come to c4 after that. Bishop e2, the bishop on c1 can go to f4. Let's have a look. Knight c6, e4, king c2, knight c4, e6, bishop f4. This endgame is not equal. Rook d1. White has a nice easy game. MVL, fearing the preparation of this queen exchange, decides to keep it, which he has done in most of his games anyway. He's played queen c7 6 times. e4, e6, bishop d3, the new move. Here is the novelty by Radjabov. Bishop e3 has been played 3 times. Twice by Wesley So and once by Svidler against MVL. Bishop e7, queen e2. If the c-pawn was a d-pawn, it would be an open Sicilian, but with no knight on c3 and knight on f6. Bishop d7, castle, a new attacking setup for white against this anti-Grunfeld line. Maybe black has some work to do in this variation. It is simple and effective. Castle was played in the game. Bishop c6 was possible, keeping white guessing just for a move. He's not committing the placement of the black king. If you go bishop c2, and after knight d7, if knight e5 is played soon, then it is not attacking the bishop on c2, hence this retreat. Bishop e3, a6, planning b5. If you stop it, now you can castle. There's a huge difference between this and the game. Let's see. Knight d2 looks good, with f4 next, and the game goes on. Maybe black can play b5 here, but in the game, knight g5 was played, and this is the key difference. h6 is possible, and knight e4 is not. The pawn is already on e5. Let's see this variation soon. Black castles and Radjabov goes e5. Kingside attacking possibilities are real. Bishop c6 played in order to stop queen e4. If knight c6, queen e4, g6, bishop h6, this looks like a c3 Sicilian gone wrong. After rook e8, h4, white is just building up his attack. Bishop c6 played, and knight g5. This is the big difference between this and the variation. The knight is not on d7 already. Black has committed the king, and this knight has the chance to go back to e4. After knight g5, the kingside attack begins. h6 played in the game, but why not g6? Rook e1, let's defend our strong point, and after knight d7, knight takes h7. This is a thematic sacrifice in which white has 2 bishops facing the black king. King takes, queen h5 check, king g7, let's force the black king on the back. Queen h6 check, king g8 take, crashing through in style. If you take, check, a typical rook lift. That's why we put the rook on e1 to give white this possibility. Bishop f3, trying to delay things, queen h6 check, forcing the king on g8 and then taking the e6 pawn. A typical way in which to collect all of black's pawns. If rook f7, then rook takes f3. Knight takes e5, defending and attacking the rook, and rook g3 check, king h8, and a really cool move, bishop f4. If rook takes f4, queen h6 is mate. If bishop f6, rook e1, then the black position is just collapsing. If you play queen e7, you can play rook takes e5. After bishop e5, bishop e5. Check just collects everything. King h7, queen g6 is mate. Back to the game. After h6, bishop h7 check. It is useful to put the king on h8. But why? Bishop comes back to c2. Now we can see the knight on g5 is immune. You cannot take on g5 because bishop takes g5. You cannot take because queen h5 is a mate in 2. Bishop c2, c4 play to stop queen d3, a queen and bishop battery. Rook e1, still you cannot take on g5. That's why it looks like h6 is just a weakening of the king. Queen d8, MVL is now ready to take on g5. He forces the issue, and now Radjabov plays a clever knight move to use the knight as a defender and an attacker. Knight h3, a more creative retreat than knight e4. Queen d5, knight f4, queen c5. How to continue the attack? Radjabov is insistent on this queen and bishop battery, so he plays bishop b1. After bishop g5, knight takes e6, he crashes through. Let's have a look at the other alternative, which is b4, which is a really cool move. After b4, one option is en passant. Let's have a look at the two worst options. Queen b5 is the worst one, queen c2, and white is just checkmating very soon after g6, knight takes g6 check. Really, the black queen needed to be on this diagonal. You'll see shortly. After take, queen takes g6, threatening mate in 1. You can only stop it in one way with bishop e4. Take, queen d7, and really the entire position just collapses. Now instead of queen b5, let's look at queen b6. Knight takes e6, cashing in, and after f takes e6, bishop takes g5, just like the game. You cannot take because this is just a typical mate in 4. You guard the square that the king can escape, and after king g8, then queen h7 is mate. b4, let's look at the final option, which is en passant, and now a really cool intermezzo, queen d3, threatening mate and defending c3. After g6, you can take, bishop a3 is next. White's attack continues. In the game, knight takes e6 was played, grabbing the material. After f takes e6, bishop takes g5 is the point. Queen d5 played in the game. You cannot play h takes because we have seen this typical mate in 4 pattern. Before bishop h7, you guard the escape square and then mate. After queen d5, queen g4 defends g2 and also brings the queen into the attack. Same problem, you cannot take because we've just seen it before. After queen g4, knight d7 played in the game, but what if queen takes g2 check? Queen takes, bishop takes, h takes, and now is black getting out? No, because there's a very accurate move here to restrict black's rooks, beginning with bishop g6. This is a key move which leads to a winning rook endgame. Let's see this. Knight c6, rook d1, and now rook d6, attacking e6, and black cannot defend e6 sensibly. The bishop on g6 is guarding e8. Knight e7, bring the bishop back, b7 and e6 are hanging, and now knight f5, take, rook d4, and white is better in this rook endgame. If you go b5, e6, let's push your pass pawn. Also e6 is such a good move because you're just restricting the black king. It can't come out. After rook e8, e7, rook g8, and here we see the point. The king cannot go to f7 in this variation, and white can play a really cool move with h4. After g4, king g3, white is in charge. Rook can go to d7, rook can go to e5, the king can come to f4 to g5. White has a winning rook endgame. Back to the game. After knight d7, bishop e4 played. Knight takes e5, queen h5. Threatening bishop takes h6, and the queen is hanging. Queen b5 played in the game. What if knight f3 check? It leads to a lost rook endgame. Bishop takes f3, queen takes g5. Everything comes off, but then black will be ruined. His pawn structure is ruined. Queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes e6. Rook b8, you can just go rook b1. And the rook on e6 has too many possibilities. It will attack the doubled C and the double G pawns. The rook can go to E7, it can go to E5 and then back to C5. It can just go back to E4 to guarantee picking up the C4 pawn. This rook endgame favours white tremendously. In the real game, queen b5 played, bishop takes h6. White decides to transform the position into an opposite bishop double rook endgame in which he controls the kingside attacking chances. Bishop takes e4 played. You cannot take on h6 because it's just mate in 2. After bishop takes e4, bishop f4 discovered check, and now queen takes e5. Bishop d5 played. Interesting, MVL chose not to get the queens off. Rook queen takes e5. Bishop takes e5, bishop d5, rook d1. White still has a lot to do. Rook f5, rook d4, f3, king f2. The rook can go to g4. White still has to convert a position like this. Very surprising to not see MVL go for this. This might have been his best shot at saving this game. Bishop d5 played, the queens are still on the board. Rook e2 defending b2 and f2. Rook f5, drop the queen back. Black does the same. If we compare the queens, white's queen will be a more useful attacker than black's as a defender. f3, queen g6, h4. Really cool move because after rook f8, bishop g5, restricting black's mobility on the dark squares. a6, rook d1, queen e8, rook d4, queen c6, rook g4. A really cool way to swing the queen's rook to the kingside to attack g7. White's idea is now to put a bishop, rook or queen on the dark squares d4, e5, and he will be crashing through on the king side. King h7 played, bishop f4, rook f7, bishop e5. Here we go. If need be, the bishop can tuck itself back on d4. After b5, queen f2, queen g3. The pressure is building, so many pieces on g7. It would be nice to get the h-pawn in the attack too. It is not possible at the moment because of the rook on f5. Rook h5, bishop d4, queen c7, rook e5, making it happen. No point trading queens now. Black's king is so weak. Rook e5 giving white the chance to move the h-pawn. After rook f5, rook g5. Nice support along the 5th rank. h5 is now possible. King g8, h5. The final attacking player in this positional delight. Rook takes g5, queen takes g5, queen e7. You had your chance, not swapping off queens. Let's drop it back. Queen g4, h6 is still a threat. In this position, MVL blundered with rook f5, and then white just won the rook with queen takes f5. After take, rook takes e7, that's the end of the game. But what happened, instead of rook f5, if black played, let's say, king f8 or king h7. Let's look at king h7 first. Queen g6 check, and after king g8, rook g5, pressure on the g-file, building throughout the whole game, king f8, h6, and that's it. If you take, queen g8 is mate, and the great thing is if you don't take, h7, and you cannot stop queen. If king f8, now what? Let's go rook g5. If you go queen d7, just hanging about, h6 is, that's it, really. h6 is so useful. After take, bishop c5 check, dark square domination, king e8, rook check, and then rook f8 is mate. A positional delight of a game by Radjabov, who qualifies for the finals and also gets a spot in the candidates. Check out one video over here and check out another video over here. If you enjoyed the video, then why not like the video and subscribe to the channel at the same time. Thanks for watching, until next time.